Are you ready for some Titan on Titan action? Because in this week's episode, the complex relationship between Ymir and Christa reveals many revelations, and just as many questions. And yes, we finally get to see Ymir in her incredibly freaky and monstrous Titan form. All that and more in this week's action-packed episode of Attack on Titan. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys. I didn't like this episode at first. I really didn't believe that it would live up to the hype. And the first time I watched that, I was like, that was okay. But upon watching this episode for a second time, I have a much further appreciation for this one. The main reason that I was so salty initially was that when I watched the episode for the first time, it opened up with like a 10-minute flashback. Half of the episode dedicated to something that is not watching Ymir fight against Titans. And that really pissed me off, because I had to wait an entire week just to see this shit. And I felt like I was just being robbed of something really awesome. And at first, I didn't care for it. When I watched it again, I love the backstory of Ymir and Christa. I especially love how we get to see how similar these characters are, not to mention, a lot of big things are revealed about them in this week's episode, like the fact that Ymir has the ability to transform into a Titan, or the fact that Christa apparently is of royalty. A weird sort of, we don't really give a shit about this person royalty, so we're gonna kick them to the curb and hope they die kind of royalty, but royalty nonetheless. This is why everybody sort of sees her as a princess. Not only is she incredibly cute and beautiful, but she comes from something in the series that hasn't really been gotten into all that much, and that is, of course, the hierarchy of the Attack on Titan world. The kingdoms, the kings, the queens. And I'm sure it's going to have some sort of tie to the origins of the Titans themselves, especially with the way that Ymir is just so incredibly fascinated by Christa and her ability to want to constantly have herself get killed. She seems to be obsessed with the concept of suicide, which is why she's always sort of going out of her way to save people, hoping that she'll die in the process, by seen as something good and maybe not so much as a burden to that weird freaky deaky religion in the series. Get it? Got it? Good. The first half of the episode, like I said, is basically just a big flashback. We go back to this training sequence where the Survey Corps is making their way to this, like, base camp in the middle of these snowy mountains, which is a pretty unique locale for the Attack on Titan world. I was kind of hoping we'd get to see a big snow battle with some of the Titans. But what's going on here is the Survey Corps are trying to make their way to this base camp, and everyone has made it there except for 3 people. Ymir, Christa, and some chicken shit named Daz. A character who's made a couple of small appearances in the series and completely continues to live up to his complete wussy ways. Now, what's going on here is that they are stuck in the woods because Daz has fallen ill, he can't walk anymore, and he is having his ass dragged across the snow, wrapped up by Christa, who is desperately trying to save him, coming up with the ultimatum that if Daz doesn't survive, none of them are going to survive. It's all or nothing for her, and of course Ymir is saying, why don't we just kick his ass to the curb? He's got 1 foot in the grave. We just need to be done with this and get back alive ourselves. Of course, this is something that Christa cannot do, as she's constantly going through these little suicidal moments. She basically wants to be the hero, knowing that it is going to result in her very own death, which is something she always seems to be charging towards. This is something that really gets under Ymir's skin, and she also does not like fakeness, which is why she was calling out Sasha and why she's calling out Christa. She wants her to actually reveal her true name and live up to her actual standards of where she came from, instead of hiding it and coming up with a fake alias. It's surprisingly deep between these 2 characters, and then comes the scene that the first time I just didn't really notice. It's this great moment where Ymir decides that she's going to take Daz down to the base camp by going down this big massive cliff. And of course, we now know that she is a Titan, so she has the ability to transform into a Titan, pick up Daz, and walk on down. But she makes sure that Christa can't see this by tossing her down a little hill where she smacks into a tree and gets covered in snow. I love the little detail of when she's walking away and you can actually see like the big Titan transformation explosion glowing in the darkness, and then suddenly she just disappears. And that makes sense because unlike a lot of the other Titans, Ymir's Titan form is not very large. It's a little smaller and very disproportionate. She has a really big head, but super long arms and is able to move around like a friggin' spider. It's kind of insane. So, of course, she ends up saving Daz, bringing him back to base camp. Christa arrives, and that's, of course, where Ymir decides to tell her secret. But apparently not everything about it, as when we finally go back to the present, we are treated to an amazing action set piece where Ymir just goes complete ham on some freaking Titans. Just running around this tower, flipping from Titan to Titan, biting into the nape of their neck and ripping it out and spitting it all at the same time, grabbing the giant blocks from the tower and constantly throwing them at the faces of these Titans. Guys, it's a thrilling action sequence and it totally lives up to the hype. It's awesome. I really do love it. But with all of that going on, I think one of the most fascinating aspects of this episode and another big reveal is that apparently Ymir is actually the Titan that ate the friend of Reiner and Bertholdt. And I'm not sure what the significance of this is, but you can tell that Reiner is absolutely pissed in this episode when he's holding on to Christa's leg as she's about to fall over the edge of the tower, and he is squeezing way too damn hard. The shock that Ymir is actually a Titan has really just sent him into this rage, and I can't wait to see what it's actually going to bring in the next episode, because this one comes to a pretty awesome conclusion where Ymir is seemingly being overrun by all of these Titans, and they start to eat her alive, biting at her legs and arms, and pretty much just ripping them in half. And that's when the tower starts to fall over after Christa gives Ymir this amazing pep talk about them destroying it and saving all the friends, and they all get crushed, and then the Survey Corps come in like the freaking White Knights they are, flying all over the place, zipping through the air, slicing through the necks of Titans. Mikasa, of course, makes a really great entrance, and Eren even gets his first kill, which for me is actually kind of surprising. You'd think with what he's actually done in the series that he would have already had a kill like that, but this is not counting when he transforms into a Titan. And of course, he's really excited about it before he ends up just slamming his ass into the dirt and just totally eating it. It's a really funny moment, and it adds a little bit of levity to the extremeness of this episode. And it all ends with them seemingly winning, defeating the Titans, and Ymir reverting back to her human form where she has lost a leg, she's lost an arm, and Christa is there holding her in her arm, and now that Ymir has revealed her true self, and this is when Christa decides to reveal her true self, her true name, and it is Historia. I'm not sure what the hell it means, but it's a pretty cool revelation. End of the episode! So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Attack on Titan? So many questions. I have no idea what's going on here with the whole Historia subplot, the connection with Ymir, Ymir eating Reiner, Bertholdt's friend. There's just so many things going on in my head right now, and yet I know it's all going to be connected somehow to the origins of the Titans themselves. Now, what I do find most interesting about this episode, of course, is the flashback between Ymir and Christa. I think it was handled really well, and there's still a lot of things that they are keeping hidden. I am curious to know if Ymir actually did tell Christa that she is actually a half-Titan, or maybe she has some abilities that they don't want the other, parts of the Survey Corps to know about, because she claims she had no idea that Ymir was actually going to transform into a Titan. And when she does, whoo boy, does it look freaking awesome. There's a lot of animation sequences in this episode that are just distinctly Attack on Titan, if you know what I mean. Just the camera sweeps, the motion, the way that Ymir looks when she's actually jumping from Titan to Titan is just brutal and just damn awesome. I also thought that it was really cool that she was able to communicate as a Titan. She actually is able to talk. When Christa is actually reaching out to Ymir, she goes to the top of the tower and all of the characters actually jump onto her back and hair as they make their way to the bottom as this massive tower just falls on these Titans. It's a really great set piece, and honestly, it just gets the blood pumping in the absolute best way possible. This was a great, thrilling episode from beginning to end. While the first half of the episode was a little slow, it was incredibly atmospheric and revealed a lot about the backstories of Ymir and Christa, as well as building up these characters just a little bit more, which I think has been the biggest accomplishment of the second season so far, are the side characters, getting to know them just a little bit more. Because in the first season, they really just didn't do all that much. Like, Ymir and Christa did practically nothing from the first season, and now they are integral characters in the story, which I think is really damn cool. Shows that the creator of the series has been planning out something really solid for the fan base, and I can only imagine how people reacted when they read this in the manga for the first time, but for someone who only watches the anime, this episode was friggin' great, man. I loved it! So, what more can I say? This was a fantastic episode of Attack on Titan, probably my favorite episode from the second season thus far, and that's saying a lot considering that at first I just didn't like it. But I recommend viewing it again, as you see so much more that you didn't see the first time, and I just can't wait to see what else these other characters are going to do. Also, it was kind of fun just to see Jean again, like in the flashback, because where the hell has he been the second season? I'm kind of waiting for him to actually make his appearance. So there it is. That's my thoughts on this one. I'm giving this one a 5 out of 5. It was definitely a solid episode. But I want to hear from you guys. Make sure to tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Attack on Titan. What did you think of Ymir's transformation sequence in fighting against the Titans themselves? What is the deal with Christa and her name Historia? What is this going to mean for the rest of the series? And what do you hope to see from the rest of the second season of Attack on Titan? Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things Attack on Titan anime related. Make sure to leave me a comment telling me what you thought about the episode. I'd also love to talk with you guys about it. I'm always down for a great conversation. And of course, if you liked the video, why don't you give it a thumbs up? If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay dandy, baby.